You know what's wild? We live in a world where Hollywood actors smile for the cameras, thank each other at award shows, and post cute behind-the-scenes photos on Instagram, but then you hear stories like this and realize some of those movie sets are absolute war zones. I'm talking about Rebecca Ferguson, and if you don't know who she is, you're about to find out why she's one of the bravest people in Hollywood right now. So Rebecca just dropped another bombshell about that mystery co-star who made her life a living nightmare on set, and here's the kicker. She's got receipts now. Other actors have come forward, well, sort of, and what she's saying is honestly making me respect her even more because most people would have just stayed quiet, taken the paycheck, and moved on, but not Rebecca. She's out here naming and shaming, well, kind of, and I'm going to tell you exactly what went down, why this matters so much more than you think, and the one detail she revealed that actually made my jaw drop. Let me paint you a picture first, because understanding who Rebecca Ferguson is matters here. This isn't some fresh-faced actor trying to make a name for herself by stirring up drama. We're talking about someone who's been in massive franchises, worked with some of the biggest names in the business, and has always been known as a consummate professional. She's the kind of actor directors fight to work with. So when someone like that comes out and says they had a nightmare experience on set, you better believe people are going to listen. But here's where it gets interesting, and trust me, this is where the story really starts cooking. Rebecca sat down with the Times recently, and this wasn't just some fluff piece about her latest project. This was raw, honest, and frankly, kind of shocking. She revealed that after speaking out about this unnamed co-star last year, other people have reached out to her. These are actors who've worked with the same person, and they're basically confirming everything she said. They had a terrible time too. Now, think about that for a second. This isn't an isolated incident. This isn't Rebecca being overly sensitive or having one bad day. This is a pattern. This is someone in Hollywood who apparently has a reputation for being difficult. And I'm using the word difficult very generously here because what Rebecca describes goes way beyond difficult. And you want to know what's even crazier? The person she's talking about hasn't even reached out to her. Not an apology, not a conversation, nothing. Radio silence. When I first read that, I thought, wow, that takes a special kind of arrogance or maybe a complete lack of self-awareness. But Rebecca's response to that is what really got me. She said she doesn't care if they know she was talking about them. Let that sink in for a moment. Most actors would be terrified of burning bridges in Hollywood because it's such a small industry, but Rebecca is basically saying, bring it on. She even admitted that she would throw someone under the bus in front of an entire crew to make a point. And while she acknowledges that's not necessarily the best approach, I kind of love the honesty there. She's not trying to be perfect, she's just trying to be real. Now, let me tell you what actually happened on that set, because when Rebecca first opened up about this last year, it was one of those moments where you're listening and you can feel the pain in her words. She was on the Rain with Josh Smith podcast, and she just let it all out. She talked about working with what she called an absolute idiot of a co-star. And before you start guessing, she's already ruled out some names. It's not Tom Cruise, it's not Ryan Reynolds, and it's not Hugh Jackman, so stop right there with those theories. But whoever it was made her experience on set absolutely miserable. Picture this scenario. You're an accomplished actor, you've done your homework, you know your lines, you're ready to deliver a great performance, but your co-star is having a meltdown. They can't get their scenes right, they're insecure, they're angry, and instead of dealing with their own issues, they decide to take it out on you. That's exactly what happened to Rebecca. This person would scream at her in front of the entire crew. We're not talking about constructive criticism or even a heated disagreement about a scene. This was full-on verbal abuse. The co-star would look at her and say things like, "You call yourself an actor? This is what I have to work with? What is this?" Can you imagine standing there in front of dozens of crew members while someone tears you apart like that? Rebecca said she would literally walk off set crying. And here's the part that made me the angriest when I first heard this story, because this person was number one on the call sheet, meaning they were the biggest name on the project. There was no safety net for Rebecca. Nobody had her back. The power dynamic was completely lopsided, and everyone knew it. The producers, the director, the crew, they all knew what was happening, but nobody was stepping in to stop it because they couldn't afford to upset the big star. It's one of those ugly truths about Hollywood that nobody really wants to talk about. If you're a big enough name, if you're bringing in enough money, you can pretty much treat people however you want and get away with it. But Rebecca wasn't going to just take it forever. After dealing with this abuse, she finally reached her breaking point. The next day when she walked on set, she confronted this person head on. She told them to get off her set, and then she dropped this and said she'd rather act to a tennis ball than work with them again. Now, if you're not familiar with how movies are made, acting to a tennis ball means literally performing your scene while looking at a tennis ball on a stick instead of your actual co-star. It's usually done for special effects shots, but Rebecca was so done with this person that she preferred staring at a tennis ball to looking at their face. That's the level of disrespect and mistreatment we're talking about here. And you know what the producers said when she stood up for herself? They told her she couldn't do that because this person was #1 on the call sheet. They essentially said the abusive behavior had to continue because the other actor was more important. But Rebecca wasn't backing down. She told them, fine, the person can turn around and she'll act to the back of their head. And that's exactly what she did for the rest of the shoot. Let me just say, I think this takes an incredible amount of courage, and honestly, it shouldn't have had to come to that point. The fact that Rebecca had to stand up for herself because nobody else would is a massive problem. This isn't just about one bad actor or one terrible experience on set. This is about a systemic issue in the entertainment industry where power protects power, and if you're lower on the totem pole, you're basically expendable. When Rebecca first shared this story, a lot of people in Hollywood came to her defense. The Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson publicly applauded her for speaking out, and you know what? That matters. When someone with that level of fame and influence says, hey, I see you, I support you, what you went through was wrong, it gives other people courage to share their own stories. And that's exactly what's been happening. Since Rebecca opened up, other actors have reached out to her privately to say they went through similar experiences with the same person. That validation has to feel good in some way because it confirms what she already knew. She wasn't being dramatic, she wasn't overreacting, she was being abused, and she had every right to speak up about it. Now, let's talk about why this matters beyond just one actor and one bad experience. Hollywood has been grappling with issues of power, abuse, and accountability for years now. The Me Too movement shined a light on sexual harassment and assault in the industry, but verbal and emotional abuse often gets overlooked. People think, well, they weren't physically harmed, so what's the big deal? But psychological abuse can be just as damaging. And when it happens in a workplace environment where you have no power to fight back, it can be absolutely devastating. Rebecca talking about crying as she walked off set, that's not weakness. That's a human being pushed to their emotional limit. And the fact that she had to stand there and take it day after day because the system was protecting her abuser is infuriating. But here's what gives me hope. Rebecca isn't backing down. She's doubling down. In her recent interview with The Times, she basically said she doesn't care about the potential fallout from speaking out. She acknowledged that her approach of throwing someone under the bus isn't necessarily something she's proud of, but she also made it clear that she's not going to stay silent when she sees injustice. And I respect that so much, because Hollywood needs more people like her. We need actors who are willing to risk their careers to call out bad behavior. We need producers and directors who will prioritize creating safe work environments over protecting their stars. We need an industry-wide shift in how power dynamics are handled on set. The other thing that struck me about Rebecca's comments is her self-awareness. She said it's a really tricky world, acknowledging that navigating these situations isn't black and white. Speaking out comes with consequences, staying silent comes with consequences, and finding the right balance is incredibly difficult. But the fact that she's willing to have these messy, complicated conversations publicly is exactly what needs to happen. Change doesn't come from everyone playing it safe and being polite. Change comes from people being willing to make waves even when it's uncomfortable. Now, I want to circle back to something Rebecca said that I think is really important. She mentioned that this person was being insecure and angry because they couldn't get their scenes out, and she thinks her vulnerability and comfort made her an easy target. There's something really profound in that observation. Often the people who are the most abusive are the ones who are deeply insecure themselves. They lash out at others as a way to deflect from their own inadequacies. That doesn't excuse the behavior, not even a little bit, but it does explain it. And it also highlights why these power structures are so dangerous. When you give someone who's insecure and volatile unchecked power over other people, bad things are going to happen. The entertainment industry has historically operated on a star system where the biggest names get treated like gods, and everyone else is expected to just deal with whatever behavior those stars dish out. But that model is slowly starting to crack, and Rebecca Ferguson is one of the people wielding the hammer.
Every time she speaks out, every time she refuses to back down, she's making it a little bit harder for abusive actors to get away with their behavior. She's also making it a little bit easier for the next person who experiences something similar to speak up. And that ripple effect is invaluable. So where do we go from here? Well, the mystery co-star is still unnamed, and I honestly don't know if Rebecca will ever publicly reveal who it is. Part of me thinks the ambiguity actually works in her favor because it puts every actor who's ever behaved badly on notice. They don't know if she's talking about them or not, and that uncertainty might make some people think twice about how they treat others on set. But another part of me wishes she would name names because real accountability requires transparency. As long as this person remains anonymous, they can continue working and potentially mistreating other actors. Other performers might unknowingly sign on to projects with them and end up in the same nightmare experience Rebecca experienced.